The stars above New Busan were beautiful that night. Admiral Kim Dae-ho stood at the window of his office, watching the twin moons rise over the green fields below. The colony had grown so much in 20 years. What started as a small research station was now home to 2.3 million people. Farmers, scientists, teachers, children, all of them building a new life far from Earth. Dae-ho smiled as he watched the lights of the capital city flicker on. His own daughter lived down there with her husband and their newborn son. He had promised to visit them next week. He had promised to hold his grandson for the first time. The alarm shattered everything. Red lights flooded his office. The emergency signal screamed through every speaker in the military base. Dae-ho ran to the command center, his heart pounding in his chest. Officers were shouting, pointing at screens filled with red dots. "Admiral, unknown vessels entering the system," a young officer reported. His voice was shaking. "Over 300 ships. They are not responding to any communication." Ho stared at the screen. 300 ships. His entire defense force was 12 vessels. 12 old patrol ships against an armada. "Try all frequencies," he ordered. "Send greetings in every known language. Maybe they are lost. Maybe they need help." But deep inside, Dae-ho knew the truth. These ships were not lost. They moved in perfect formation, spreading out to surround the planet. This was not a mistake. This was an invasion. In the science building across the city, Dr. Park Yuna was working late. She was always working late. Her research on alien plant life had kept her busy for months. When the alarm sounded, she thought it was a drill. Then she looked out her window and saw people running in the streets. Her communicator buzzed with an emergency. Message from Governor Lee Seung-jin. All citizens were to move to evacuation points. This was not a drill. Yuna grabbed her data drives and ran. The governor's office was chaos. Seung-jin stood at the center, trying to organize an evacuation he knew was impossible. 3 cargo freighters sat at the spaceport. They could hold maybe 5,000 people. What about the other 2.3 million? "We need more time," Seung-jin said to Admiral Dae-ho through the video screen. "Can you give us more time?" Dae-ho looked at his 12 ships on the display. 12 ships against 300. He thought of his daughter, his grandson, the promise he had made. "I will give you everything I have," he said. The alien fleet did not wait for negotiations. They did not send warnings or demands. The first shots came without any message at all. 3 patrol ships exploded in seconds, their crews never knowing what hit them. Admiral Dae-ho ordered his remaining ships forward. It was suicide, and every officer knew it. But they flew anyway. They flew because every minute they survived was another minute for the evacuation shuttles. Lieutenant Han Mina was supposed to be off duty that night. She was at her parents' house, eating dinner with her mother, father, and younger brother. When the sirens started, her father told her to go. He was a retired pilot himself. He understood duty. "Go," he said, hugging her tight. "We will get to the evacuation point. We will see you soon." Mina ran to the spaceport. She climbed into her fighter and launched into the burning sky. Above her, the battle was already lost. She watched Admiral Dae-ho's flagship charge directly at the enemy command ship. It exploded in a ball of fire, taking 2 alien vessels with it. The admiral was gone. 9 ships remained. Then 7. Then Mina flew a cover for the evacuation shuttles. Her targeting computer screamed warnings as enemy fighters swarmed around her. She fired and fired, her hands steady, even as tears ran down her face. She could see the city burning below. She could see the fields where she had played as a child turning to ash. The alien bombardment was systematic and complete. They burned everything. Homes, schools, hospitals. They made no attempt to land troops or capture prisoners. They simply wanted to destroy. On one of the cargo freighters, Dr. Park Yuna pressed her face against the window. She watched her laboratory disappear in a column of fire. 20 years of research gone in seconds. But that was nothing compared to the people. She could see tiny figures running through the streets below, trying to find shelter that did not exist. Governor Seung-jin never made it to the evacuation point. His transport was hit by debris from a collapsing building. His last act was to send a message to Earth, a simple recording of what was happening. He wanted the galaxy to know. He wanted humanity to remember. The Vorath Dominion recorded everything too. Overlord Dex, commander of the invasion fleet, watched the destruction with satisfaction. This was how his people had ruled for 40,000 years. Find young civilizations, destroy them before they could become threats. It was efficient. It was safe. It was the way things had always been done. He ordered the recording broadcast across known space. Let other species see what happened to those who expanded into Vorath territory. Let them learn fear. Only 3 freighters escaped. 4,000 survivors out of 2.3 million. Lieutenant Han Mina flew escort until her fighter ran out of fuel. She landed in the cargo bay of the last freighter, her hands still shaking on the controls. She tried to contact her parents. No response. She tried her brother. Nothing. She tried every frequency she knew, calling names into the void until her voice gave out. The freighter captain found her sitting in her cockpit, staring at nothing. He did not have words of comfort. What could anyone say? Behind them, New Busan burned. The Vorath fleet remained in orbit for 3 more days, making sure nothing survived. When they finally left, the planet was silent. No signals, no life signs, no hope. 2.3 million people. Teachers who had graded papers that morning, children who had played in the parks, farmers who had worried about the harvest, grandparents who had told stories to their grandchildren, all of them gone. Admiral Kim Dae-ho never held his grandson. Governor Lee Sung-jin never finished his evacuation plans. Dr. Park Yuna's colleagues never published their research. And somewhere in the ashes of a small house on the outskirts of the capital, Mina's family waited for a reunion that would never come. The 3 freighters limped toward Earth, carrying their broken survivors and their terrible news. The journey would take 3 weeks. 3 weeks for the survivors to grieve, to rage, to plan. The Vorath believed the matter was finished. They had sent their message. They had shown their power in their 40,000 years of conquest. No species had ever responded to such destruction with anything but submission. They did not understand humans. They did not know what they had awakened. On the lead freighter, Lieutenant Han Mina stopped crying. She wiped her face, straightened her uniform, and made a promise to the stars she would return. And she would not return alone. The 3 freighters arrived at Earth on a cold morning in December. They came out of faster-than-light travel near the moon, their hulls scarred and their engines failing. Emergency crews rushed to meet them, expecting refugees who needed food and medical care. They were not prepared for what they found. The survivors stepped off the ships like ghosts. They did not speak. They did not cry. They simply walked forward with empty eyes, carrying nothing but the clothes on their backs and memories that would haunt them forever. Lieutenant Han Mina was the last to leave her freighter. She carried a data chip in her hand, pressed so tight that her fingers had gone white. On that chip was everything. The recordings from New Busan, the final messages, the proof of what the Vorath had done. She walked past the medical teams and the reporters and the government officials. She walked until she found a military officer with enough rank to matter. "Take me to Fleet Command," she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with something that made the officer step back. "Take me there now." Fleet Admiral Choi Hoyenwoo was in his office when the message came. He was an old man, 73 years of service behind him. He had seen wars and disasters and every kind of tragedy the universe could offer. He thought nothing could surprise him anymore. He was wrong. The footage from New Busan played on his screen for 2 hours. He watched it all. Every explosion, every death, every moment of the massacre. When it finished, he watched it again. His hands did not shake. His face did not change. But something inside him turned to iron. Secretary General Kong Nari arrived within the hour. She was young for her position, only 52, but she had earned her place through intelligence and determination. She watched the footage in silence, then turned to Admiral Choi. "How soon can we respond?" she asked. "That depends on what kind of response you want." Nari looked at the frozen image on the screen. A city burning. Children running. Ships falling from the sky. She had grown up hearing stories about humanity's violent past, the wars that had nearly destroyed Earth before the unification. She had always believed those days were behind them. "I want justice," she said quietly. "I want the galaxy to know that this will never happen again." The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Every screen showed the destruction of New Busan. Every speaker carried the screams of the dying. People gathered in the streets, not to protest or demand action, but simply to stand together, to share their grief, to remember. In Seoul, an old woman lit a candle for her nephew who had moved to New Busan 5 years ago. In Cairo, a father held his children close and thanked God they had not emigrated last year as planned. In New York, a teenager watched the footage and walked straight to a military recruiting station. The Galactic Council sent their response within days. Ambassador Ren of the Sulari species arrived on Earth with a delegation of 12 alien races. They came to offer sympathy and advice. The meeting took place in the Great Hall of the United Earth Government. Admiral Choi stood at attention while Secretary General Nari received the delegation. Lieutenant Han Mina had been invited to attend as a witness. Ambassador Rin was a tall, slender being with silver skin and 4 arms. His species had traveled the stars for 2 million years. They had seen civilizations rise and fall like waves on a beach. "We grieve with you," Ren said, his voice gentle. "The Vorath are ancient and powerful. They have destroyed hundreds of species throughout their history. The Council's policy has always been to designate safe zones, to give the Vorath what they want in exchange for peace." Nari listened without expression. "And how has that policy worked?" Ren hesitated. "It has maintained stability." Stability for whom? The species that were destroyed? The billions who died while the Council watched? The ambassador shifted uncomfortably. The Vorath cannot be defeated in open war. They possess over 200,000 warships. They have technology far beyond most species. Those who have tried to fight them have been exterminated. Admiral Choi stepped forward. "How many have tried?" 7 species over the past 10,000 years. "And how many ships did they have?" Ren consulted his datapad. The largest fleet was approximately 8,000 vessels. Choi nodded slowly. He looked at Secretary General Nari. Something passed between them, a decision made without words. "Thank you for your concern," Ambassador Nari said. "We will consider your advice carefully." The delegation left believing they had convinced humanity to accept the inevitable. They did not see the orders that went out that night to every military installation in human space. What the galaxy did not know, what even most humans did not know, was that Earth had been preparing for this moment for 200 years. After first contact with alien species, humanity's leaders had understood a simple truth. The universe was dangerous, and someday, something would come to destroy them. The public fleet numbered 12,000 ships. This was what the galaxy saw, what the Galactic Council counted, what the Vorath dismissed as insignificant. The true fleet was hidden in asteroid belts and deep space stations. In shipyards buried beneath the moons of Jupiter and Neptune, humanity had built their real defense. 60,000 warships, each one designed not for patrol or exploration, but for war. Admiral Choi sent the activation codes. Across human space, commanders opened sealed orders that had waited decades for this moment. Ships that had never flown began their power-up sequences. Crews that had trained in secret reported to their stations on Mars. Captain Yoon Tae-sik received his orders aboard the Indomitable, a Titan-class dreadnought 3 kilometers long. He had commanded this ship for 5 years, running drills and simulations, always wondering if the call would ever come. Now it had. Dr. Park Yuna was brought to military intelligence headquarters. Her knowledge of the Vorath attack patterns made her valuable. She spent her days analyzing every second of footage from New Busan, looking for weaknesses, looking for hope. "They are confident," she told the admirals. "They do not expect resistance. They attack in predictable formations because no one has ever made them change." Lieutenant Han Mina requested transfer to the combat fleet. Her request was approved within hours. She was assigned to the Indomitable as a squadron leader. When she reported for duty, Captain Yoon looked at her service record, then at her face. He saw the same thing everyone saw. A woman who had lost everything and had nothing left but purpose. "Welcome aboard, Lieutenant," he said. "We are going to make them pay." The mobilization took 90 days. 90 days of ships emerging from hidden bases. 90 days of crews saying goodbye to their families. 90 days of preparation for the largest military operation in human history. Secretary General Nari sent one final message to the Galactic Council. It was short and simple. "We are coming for the Voroth. We will accept their surrender or their destruction. There is no third option. And to any species that stands in our way, remember New Busan, remember what we lost, and understand what we are willing to do to ensure it never happens." Again, the galaxy watched in disbelief as 60,000 human warships assembled near Earth. Ambassador Ren sent urgent warnings that humanity was committing suicide. The Vorath laughed at the reports, eager for another easy victory. None of them understood. None of them had ever seen what humans could do when they were truly angry. The Black Armada, painted in the colors of mourning, prepared to jump to faster-than-light travel. Admiral Choi stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Soul, and gave the order that would change the galaxy forever. All ships engage drives. Destination: Voroth Prime. We have a debt to collect. The jump through faster-than-light travel took 7 days. 7 days of waiting, preparing, and remembering. On every ship in the Black Armada, crews checked their weapons, tested their systems, and thought about the people they had lost. Admiral Choi Hu-yanwoo spent those days walking through his flagship. He visited every deck, spoke with every crew member he could find. He learned their names, their stories, their reasons for being here. A young engineer named Bak Jin-ho had lost his sister on New Busan. A medical officer named Song Hae-won had lost her parents. A weapons technician named Ko Dong-hyun had lost his wife and 2 children. Every person Choi met had someone to mourn, someone to remember, someone to avenge. On the 3rd day, Chaplain Oh-yoon requested permission to broadcast a memorial service to all ships. Admiral Choi approved immediately. Eun-Bai was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She had served in the fleet for 40 years, comforting the dying and blessing the dead. But she had never faced anything like this. She stood before a camera in the Chapel of the Eternal Soul and began to read names. Not ranks, not titles, just names. The names of every person who had died on New Bus. It took 14 hours. Across the fleet, work stopped. Soldiers and officers and engineers gathered around screens, listening to the endless list. Some names they recognized. Most they did not, but every name mattered. Every name was a life that had been stolen. When Yoon-bai finished, her voice was barely a whisper. "We carry these names with us," she said. "We carry them into battle. We will not forget. We cannot forget. And we will make sure the universe remembers too." On the Indomitable, Lieutenant Han Mina listened to the memorial with her squadron. 12 pilots, all of them volunteers, all of them carrying their own grief. When her family's names were read, she closed her eyes but did not cry. She had no tears left. She had only purpose. Captain Yoon. Taezik found her afterward in the observation deck, staring at the swirling lights of faster-than-light travel. "Lieutenant," he said, standing beside her. "How are you holding up?" Mina did not look at him. "I am fine, Captain. No one expects you to be fine. Not after what you survived." She turned then, and Yoon saw something in her eyes that he recognized. He had seen it in the mirror that morning. "I do not want to be fine," Mina said. "I want to be ready. When we reach Voroth Prime, I want to be the first one through their defenses. I want them to see my face before they die. I want them to know that New Busan sent me." Yoon nodded slowly. "Then get some rest, Lieutenant. You will need your strength for what is coming." Dr. Park Yuna had been given a small office aboard the flagship. She spent her days analyzing Varath tactics, looking for any advantage she could find. The Varath were predictable. That was their greatest weakness. For 40,000 years, they had faced enemies who fought in conventional ways. Line against line, fleet against fleet, honor against honor. They had never lost because they always had more ships, more weapons, more soldiers. But humans did not fight that way. Yuna had studied human military history, the endless wars that had shaped her species. Humans fought dirty. They used tricks and traps and deception. They attacked where enemies did not expect. They refused to give up even when victory seemed impossible. She presented her findings to Admiral Choi on the 5th day. "They will expect us to form a battle line and charge," she explained, pointing at diagrams on her screen. "That is how every other species has fought them. They will position their fleet to overwhelm us with numbers." "And what do you suggest instead?" Choi asked. Yuna smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "We give them chaos. We attack from multiple directions at once. We use drone swarms to confuse their sensors. We target their command ships first, cut off their coordination, and we never, ever stop moving." Admiral Choi studied the diagrams for a long time. "This will be costly," he said finally. "We will lose many ships." "Yes," Yuna agreed. "But we will win." The fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel on the edge of the Vorath home system. Sensors immediately detected enemy ships moving to intercept. The Vorath had been warned. They were ready. Overlord Dex commanded the defense from his flagship, a massive vessel covered in the trophies of conquered worlds. He had assembled 180,000 warships, 3 times the human fleet. He expected this battle to be over within hours. His tactical officers reported the human formation with confusion. The enemy ships were not forming a battle line. They were spreading out in seemingly random patterns, small groups moving in different directions. "They are confused," one officer suggested. "Perhaps their commanders have lost their nerve." Dex watched the display carefully. Something about the human movements bothered him. They were not random. There was a pattern, but he could not see it. "All ships advance," he ordered. "Crush them." The Vorath fleet surged forward, confident in their numbers. They had done this 100 times before. They knew how these battles ended. Admiral Choi watched them come on his tactical display. He waited until the Vorath were fully committed. Their formations stretched thin as they chased human ships in multiple directions. "Now," he said quietly, the trap closed. Human ships that had seemed to be retreating suddenly turned and attacked. Drone swarms launched from hidden positions, filling space with thousands of decoys that confused Vorath targeting systems. Small, fast destroyers raced between enemy capital ships, targeting their engines and weapons, and in the center of the chaos, the Titan-class dreadnoughts opened fire. The Indomitable led the assault. Captain Yoon pushed his ship directly into the heart of the Vorath formation, his massive guns tearing through enemy vessels. Lieutenant Han Minna flew ahead of the dreadnought, her squadron clearing a path through enemy fighters. She fought like a demon. Her targeting computer could barely keep up with her reactions. She dodged missiles, destroyed fighters, and never stopped moving. Every kill was for her parents. Every victory was for her brother. Every moment was for Nubus. I'd never seen anything like this. Their commanders screamed orders that their ships could not follow. Their formations collapsed into chaos as human ships appeared from unexpected directions. Overlord. Dex watched his fleet dying and could not understand what was happening. These humans were supposed to be primitive, emotional, easy to defeat. Instead, they fought with a coordinated fury that his tactical officers could not counter. "Regroup," he ordered. "Form defensive positions." But it was too late. The human fleet had broken through his lines. They were everywhere, attacking from every direction, refusing to give his ships time to reorganize. On the Eternal Soul, Admiral Choi received damage reports from across the fleet. They were losing ships, many ships, but they were winning. "Continue the attack," he ordered. "No retreat, no mercy. Make them remember this day forever." The battle raged for 72 hours. 72 hours of continuous fighting, of ships dying in nuclear fire, of crews giving their lives for the chance at victory. When it finally ended, 140,000 Voroth ships had been destroyed. Human losses were 23,000 vessels, hundreds of thousands of crew members dead. It was the bloodiest battle in galactic history, and humanity had won. The surviving Voroth fleet retreated to Voroth Prime. They had never retreated before. They had never needed to. Admiral Choi looked at his exhausted crew at the damage reports still coming in. At the faces of officers who had lost friends and family in the fighting. "Set course for Voroth Prime," he said. "We are not finished yet." Voroth Prime was a massive planet, twice the size of Earth, covered in cities that had stood for 40,000 years. Billions of Voroth lived there, safe in the knowledge that no enemy had ever reached their homeworld. No enemy had ever dared, until now, the surviving human fleet. 37,000 ships entered orbit on the fourth day after the battle. They spread across the sky like a shadow, their weapons pointed at the planet below. The Voroth population looked up and saw their death written in the stars. Overlord Dex stood in his command center, surrounded by advisors who had no advice to give. Their fleet was shattered. Their defenses were broken. For the first time in their species' history, they faced the possibility of extinction. "What do they want?" Dex demanded. "Send communications. Offer them tribute. Offer them territory. Offer them whatever they ask." His communications officer worked frantically at his console. "They are not responding, Overlord. They are just waiting." The word terrified Dex more than any weapon could. These humans had traveled across the stars to avenge a single colony. They had sacrificed tens of thousands of their own people to reach this moment. What kind of species did that? What kind of madness drove them? On the Eternal Soul, Admiral Choi Haeonwoo stood before his command staff. His uniform was wrinkled from days without sleep. His face showed every one of his 73 years, but his eyes were clear and sharp. "We have achieved orbital superiority," he announced. "The Voroth homeworld is defenseless. They have requested negotiations, but I have not responded yet." His officers waited in silence. They knew what he was thinking. They all knew Dr. Park Yuna was the first to speak. "Admiral, if we bombard the planet, we will kill billions. Most of them are civilians who had nothing to do with New Busan." "The Voroth did not spare our civilians," someone replied from the back of the room. "They burned children in their schools. And if we do the same, we become them." The argument spread through the room. Officers who had lost friends in battle demanded vengeance. Others warned that genocide would make humanity no better than their enemy. Both sides grew louder, angrier, more desperate to be heard. Admiral Choi raised his hand. Silence fell immediately. "I have spent 72 hours thinking about this moment," he said slowly. "I have thought about the people we lost on New Busan. I have thought about the crews who died to get us here. I have thought about what my grandmother told me when I was a boy." He paused, looking at the faces around him. "She survived the Korean War. She watched her village burn. She lost her parents, her brothers, her friends. When I asked her how she could forgive, she told me that forgiveness was not about the enemy. It was about us. About who we choose to be. We came here for justice," Choi continued. "Not genocide. We came to ensure that New Busan never happens again. If we burn this planet, we become exactly what we set out to destroy." The room was quiet. Lieutenant Hanmina stood near the back, her fists clenched at her sides. She had dreamed of this moment for months. She had imagined watching Voroth Prime burn the way New Busan had burned. She had wanted to hear their screams, but now standing in that room she thought about her father. He had been a pilot too. He had taught her that strength without honor was just brutality. He had taught her that the hardest battles were the ones you fought inside yourself. She thought about what he would want her to do. "Admiral," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "What are your orders?" Choi looked at her. He saw the pain in her eyes, the anger, the grief. He saw all of it. And he saw something else too. Something that looked like hope. "We will demand unconditional surrender," he said. "We will dismantle their military completely. We will establish tribunals for those responsible for New Busan, and we will free every species they have conquered. And if they refuse, Captain Yoon Tae-sik asked, then we will destroy their military installations, their shipyards, their weapons factories. We will leave them defenseless, but we will not harm their civilian population. The orders went out. Across the fleet, crews prepared for the next phase of the operation. Some were relieved. Others were angry. All of them were exhausted. On Vorath Prime, Overlord Dex received the human demands. His advisors urged him to fight, to resist, to die with honor. But Dex had seen what human weapons could do. He had watched his fleet die around him. He knew there was no victory possible. Accept the terms, he said quietly. We have no choice. The surrender was broadcast across the planet. Vorath citizens watched in shock as their overlord admitted defeat. For 40,000 years they had been told they were the greatest species in the galaxy. Now they were kneeling before a race that had only traveled the stars for 3 centuries. Human soldiers. Landed on Vorath Prime the next day. They were not conquerors seeking treasure. They were investigators searching for records, identifying war criminals. Documenting 40,000 years of atrocities, Dr. Park Yuna led a team to the Vorath archives. What they found there made her sick. Records of hundreds of destroyed civilizations. Billions upon billions of dead. Species erased from existence, their names forgotten, their histories deleted. They kept trophies, she reported to Admiral Choi. Items from every civilization they destroyed. Like a collection. Catalog everything, Choi ordered. The galaxy needs to see what they did. Lieutenant Han Mina requested permission to join the ground teams. She wanted to see Vorath Prime for herself. She wanted to understand the enemy she had spent months hating. What she found surprised her. The common Vorath were not monsters. They were ordinary beings, scared and confused, wondering what would happen to their families. Children hid behind their parents when human soldiers walked past. Elderly Vorath sat in the ruins of their pride. Trying to understand how their world had changed so quickly, Mina stood in a public square, watching a young Vorath mother holding her baby. The mother looked at her with terror in her eyes. Waiting for the human to do something terrible, Mina thought about her own mother. She thought about New Busan. She thought about everything she had lost and everything she had gained. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a ration bar. She held it out to the mother. For a long moment, the Vorath woman just stared at her. Then slowly, she took the offered food. She did not understand the gesture, but she understood kindness. It was something she had never expected from the species. Her government had tried to exterminate. News of the surrender spread across the galaxy. The Galactic Council was stunned. Species that had lived in fear of the Vorath for millennia watched human news broadcasts in disbelief. Ambassador Ren sent message after message to Secretary General Kong, asking how this was possible. Her response was simple. We told you we were coming. You should have believed us. In the weeks that followed, human forces systematically dismantled the Vorath military machine. Shipyards were destroyed. Weapons factories were converted to civilian use. The conquered species of the Vorath Dominion were contacted and offered their freedom. Some species had been enslaved for thousands of years. They did not know how to be free. Human advisors stayed behind to help them rebuild, to teach them how to govern themselves. To show them that the galaxy did not have to be ruled by fear, Admiral Choi remained in orbit around Vorath Prime. Overseeing the operation, he rarely slept. He rarely ate. But every day he received reports of progress, of justice being done, of a better future being built. One evening, Chaplain Oh Yunbai found him alone in the observation deck, staring at the planet below. You should rest. Admiral, she said gently. Choi shook his head. Not yet. Not until it is finished. The work will never be truly finished. The galaxy is too big, too broken. We can only do what we can. The Admiral turned to look at her. His eyes were tired, but there was peace in them that had not been there before. Then I will do what I can, he said. For as long as I am able, The War Crimes Tribunal began 3 months after the surrender. It was held on a space station in neutral territory where representatives from every known species could watch. The galaxy needed to see justice done. They needed to believe that the old order had truly ended. Overlord Dex sat in the defendant's chair, stripped of his uniform and his titles. He was just a prisoner now, just another war criminal waiting for judgment. Around him sat 47 other Vorath commanders, the ones responsible for planning and executing the attack on New Busan. Lieutenant Han Mina was called as a witness on the first day. She walked to the stand in her formal uniform, medals on her chest, scars on her heart. The entire galaxy watched as she described what she had seen. She told them about the alarm that shattered a peaceful evening. She told them about Admiral Kim Do-ho's last charge, 12 ships against 300. She told them about the evacuation that never had a chance. She told them about her parents, her brother. The 2.3 million souls who died screaming while the universe did nothing. When she finished, the room was silent. Even the Vorath defendants seemed unable to speak. The prosecutor, a human lawyer named Song Yong-sik, asked one final question. Lieutenant Han, what do you want from this tribunal? Mina looked at Overlord Dex. The alien who had ordered her world destroyed met her gaze, then looked away. I want justice, she said. Not revenge. Not blood. Justice. I want the galaxy to know what happened on New Busan. I want them to remember our names. And I want to promise that it will never happen again to anyone, anywhere. The tribunal lasted 6 months. Witnesses from dozens of species testified about Vorath, atrocities spanning thousands of years. The evidence was overwhelming, the guilt undeniable. When the verdicts came, 43 of the defendants were found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment. 4, including Overlord Dex, received death sentences for crimes against civilization. Admiral Choi Hyun-woo watched the final verdict from his flagship. He had been offered a seat at the tribunal, but he had declined. His place was with his fleet, with the crews who had sacrificed so much to make this day possible. It is done, his aide reported. The sentences have been delivered. Choi nodded slowly. Then we can begin the next chapter. The Galactic Council extended full membership to humanity 1 week after the tribunal ended. It was not charity or pity. It was recognition. Humanity had done what no other species had dared. They had broken the Vorath dominion and changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Ambassador. Ren came to Earth personally to deliver the invitation. He met with Secretary General Kongnari in the same hall where he had once urged humanity to surrender. I owe you an apology, Ren said. We told you that resistance was impossible. We were wrong. Kong smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You were not wrong about the cost. We lost 23,000 ships and hundreds of thousands of our people. Families have been destroyed. Communities have been shattered. Victory does not heal those wounds. No, Ren agreed. It does not. But it creates the possibility of healing. That is more than any other species has achieved. The ambassador paused, choosing his next words carefully. I have watched civilizations rise and fall for 2 million years. I have seen empires that seemed eternal crumble into dust, and I have never seen anything like humanity. What do you mean? You fight with a fury that should destroy you, but it does not. You hate your enemies with a passion that should consume you, but you choose mercy instead. You break every rule of galactic warfare and somehow win anyway? Ren shook his head slowly. My people have studied you for centuries, and we still do not understand you. Kang looked out the window at the city below. People were going about their lives, working and laughing and loving, as if the galaxy had not just been turned upside down. Perhaps there is nothing to understand, she said. We are humans. We are complicated and contradictory and often foolish, but we protect our own. We remember our dead, and we do not give up, no matter how impossible the odds. The reconstruction of New Busan began the following year. Ships carrying building materials and colonists made the long journey to the Kepler 442 system. They found a dead world, scarred by orbital bombardment, covered in ash and silence. Dr. Park Yuna led the scientific team. Her job was to determine if the planet could support life again. What she found gave her hope. The soil was damaged, but not destroyed. The atmosphere was recovering. With time and care, New Busan could bloom once more. The first thing they built was a memorial. It stood at the center of where the capital city had been, a tower of black stone reaching toward the sky. On its surface were carved 2.3 million names. Every person who had died in the attack, Lieutenant Han Minna came for the dedication ceremony. She had been promoted to captain now, commanding her own destroyer. She had spent the last year escorting relief convoys and training new pilots. She had found purpose in building rather than destroying. She stood before the memorial as the sun set, reading names she recognized and names she did not. Her family was there, carved into the stone, preserved forever. "I came back," she whispered. "I promised I would. I brought friends." Behind her, thousands of colonists were setting up temporary shelters, preparing to rebuild what had been lost. They came from every corner of human space, volunteers who wanted to help, families who wanted to start fresh, dreamers who believed in second chances. Admiral Choi Hoyanwoo retired from service 6 months later. He was 74 years old, tired beyond measure, ready to rest. His final log entry was broadcast to every ship in the fleet. "We did not become monsters to defeat monsters," he said, his voice steady despite his years. "We remembered who we were. We remembered who we lost. And we made certain the galaxy would never forget what happens when humanity is pushed too far. To the crews of the Black Armada, you have earned your rest. To the families of those we lost, we honor their memory every day. And to the galaxy watching, know this: we did not seek this war, but we finished it. We ask only to live in peace, but if anyone threatens our people again, we will answer. We will always answer." Captain Yoon Tae-sik took command of the defense fleet protecting the rebuilt colony. He had refused promotion to admiral, preferring to stay close to the action. The Indomitable was repaired and upgraded, ready for whatever came next. Chaplain Oh Yoon established a memorial center on New Busan, where visitors could learn about the attack and honor the dead. She spent her days talking with survivors, helping them process their grief, showing them that life could continue even after the worst tragedy. Dr. Park Yuna published her research on the Vorath archives, documenting centuries of conquest and destruction. Her work became required reading at universities across the galaxy, a warning about what could happen when powerful species believed they could act without consequences. Secretary General Kung Nari served 2 more terms before retiring to write her memoirs. She never forgot the weight of the decisions she had made, the lives that had depended on her choices. She spent her final years teaching young diplomats that strength and compassion were not opposites. And on New Busan, crops grew in fields that had been ash. Children played in parks built over ruins. A new generation was born, carrying the names of those who had died, living the lives that had been stolen. The colony's motto was carved into the base of the memorial, visible to every ship that entered orbit. "From ashes, we rise. From sorrow, we endure. From silence, we thunder." The galaxy changed after the Vorath War. Species that had lived in fear for millennia began to assert themselves. New alliances formed, new treaties were signed, new possibilities emerged. The old order of conquest and domination was crumbling, replaced by something fragile but hopeful. Humanity took its place among the stars, not as conquerors or destroyers, but as protectors. They built ships and trained soldiers not to dominate other species, but to ensure that what happened on New Busan would never happen again to anyone. They remembered their dead, they honored their fallen, and they moved forward, carrying the weight of their history and the hope of their future. The universe was still dangerous. There would be other threats, other challenges, other moments when humanity would be tested. But they had proven something that day above Vorath Prime. They had proven that mercy was not weakness. They had proven that justice was possible even after the worst atrocities. They had proven that humans could look into the abyss without becoming the darkness they fought against. and somewhere in the rebuilt capital of New Busan, a young girl looked up at the stars and dreamed of the day she would join the fleet. She wore her grandmother's name on a bracelet, a name carved into the memorial just a few blocks away. She did not know that her grandmother had died in the attack. She only knew that her family had survived, that her people had triumphed, and that the future was full of possibilities. That was enough. That was everything. The Black Armada had come home, and humanity, scarred but unbroken, continued reaching for the stars.